63 points. That's the difference between Max Verstappen at P1 and Leclerc at P2. 82 points. That's the difference between Red Bull at P1 and Ferrari at P2 for the Constructors Championship. The team that managed to finish 1-2 in the first race in Bahrain, while both Red Bulls retired, has gone into a freefall. Although many believe that Ferrari has figured it out, they keep proving us wrong. So where did Ferrari mess up? Stay tuned to find out. The French GP just exposed yet another flaw for Ferrari as Leclerc failed to perform under pressure, and Sainz's strategy was really a controversial one, as Leclerc had to push to get the maximum from his worn-out medium compound tyres. He pushed a bit too hard and hit the tyre barriers. With all hopes on Sainz, there was a real, genuine hope that he could have ended up on the podium after passing Perez on old medium compound tyres for P3. The team didn't believe these tyres would last for the remaining 11 laps, so they decided to pit him and serve the 5-second penalty that he received earlier. Sainz then lost 2 positions and finished P5. But it wasn't all bad for Ferrari since the season started. Quite the contrary, the team had a great start, especially for Charles Leclerc. He managed to grab 2 pole positions in Bahrain and Australia. Every F1 fan was amazed to see how Ferrari took a long-awaited 1-2 win in Bahrain, the season opener. It looked like Leclerc understood the car more than Sainz, which would be kind of expected due to his experience in the car. This is why Sainz managed to pick up P2 only after Verstappen retired, completing the 1-2 win with both Red Bulls out. Australia was a mixed experience for Ferrari, as they were both happy and sad. You may ask why? Well, it seems like Sainz's old love for gravel traps hasn't faded away, as he spun and had to end the race prematurely on lap 1. That was the bad news. The good news was that Verstappen had a fuel pump problem, forcing him to retire earlier than expected. So far, so good. Ferrari is on a honeymoon, and they are looking to continue their dominance. However, it appears that Leclerc's win in Australia was the start of a long drought, as his next win was only in Austria 3 months later. The race after Australia was Emilia-Romagna, which was a sprint race weekend. This is where Red Bull secured a 1-2 win, and it was the first time that Leclerc folded under pressure. Chasing too hard for Perez at P2, he spun and finished P6. He also finished behind Verstappen in the sprint race, losing an additional point in the championship. At Miami, the straight line speed proved to be too much of an advantage for Red Bull, as Verstappen passed Leclerc yet again in the early stages of the race and cruised to a dominant win. But still, Leclerc was ahead of him in the championship and was holding somewhat of a lead. The next race is where the problem started, and it seemed like they only continued to pile up after the Barcelona GP. It was all set for dominance from Leclerc, who looked to extend the lead from Verstappen at P2. The fact that the Dutchman spun at turn 4 and lost additional seconds while chasing Leclerc only allowed the Monegasque to be comfortable at P1. But he heard a wheezing sound coming from his engine, something that no driver wants to hear, as the turbocharger of the car failed. It was the first time that Ferrari suffered from a reliability issue, as Leclerc lost the lead to Verstappen and the Dutchman won the race. Leclerc and Ferrari were looking to bounce back in Monaco, as they secured a front row start in the race. The rain and the rolling start, along with the low-speed corners, were only boosting their performance, as both Red Bulls would have to be satisfied with P3 and P4 if Ferrari had different strategists. The track started to dry, and it was time to move from full wet to intermediate, as Perez was the one that pulled the plug first. Leclerc was called in from P1 to pit for intermediates, but Perez did a monster lap from P3 and managed to complete the undercut, cutting over 3.5 seconds of Leclerc's lead. Sainz was also called, but he refused to enter for intermediates, as he believed that the track would dry more and he would go straight to hard compound tires. It seems like the Spaniard's judgment was crucial here, as losing the P1 in the pit lane was more of a matter of bad luck than missed strategy, due to him getting stuck behind Albon when exiting the pits. When Sainz was called to change the hard compound tires, Leclerc was called too, and he had to wait a couple of seconds behind Sainz due to a miscommunication. This is when Leclerc got mad and started to swear on the radio, asking nervously, "What are you doing?" Red Bull was also double stacked at the end of the lap, but much more composed and organized, which saw Perez clinch P1 and Verstappen P3 just from pitbox strategy. Off to Azerbaijan we go. This was probably the most excruciating weekend for Leclerc, as the reliability issues of the Ferrari have returned. Not just him, but Sainz also had to retire due to hydraulics issues. And this was a race that seemed like Ferrari had the advantage, especially in the low corners parts. Red Bull secured their third 1-2 finish of the season, and now Leclerc was even behind Perez at P2. Silverstone looked like a track where Leclerc could cut a massive amount of points to Verstappen's lead, since the Dutchman suffered floor damage from picking up debris after running at P1 in front of the Ferraris. Ocon retired in the last stages of the race due to fuel pump issues. The safety car was then deployed, and Sainz, Hamilton and Perez, who were P2, P3 and P4 respectively, pitted for new tires. Leclerc in the lead didn't pit and was left on his own to deal with the rest of the pack on old, hard compound tires. Missed strategy yet again. And it was even more painful that they instructed Sainz to allow Leclerc to get 10 car lengths ahead, as the Spaniard would have to fight off the attacks of Perez and Hamilton. Sainz denied this command, as he said that he was much faster than Leclerc and was aiming to secure his first career win. He passed him right at the restart of the race, leaving Leclerc as a sitting duck for the next two hunters. Just because Leclerc didn't pit, he lost on P1 to P4, similar to what happened in Monaco. With Verstappen finishing P7, it was an opportunity that was widely missed by Ferrari. In Austria, they managed to get a win over Verstappen due to better tyre management, but a weekend cannot pass without bad news for Ferrari. Sainz's engine caught fire in the last stage of the race, which was deemed to be a 1-2 finish for Ferrari since Bahrain. Into France we go. Leclerc secured the pole position and was fending off the attacks of Verstappen successfully. After the Dutchman went in and changed tyres, it was up to Leclerc to extend the lifespan of the medium compound tyre as much as he can and not allow the undercut to happen. In doing so, he spun and hit the tyre barriers, initially thinking that the throttle pedal got stuck and believing it was a reliability issue of the F175. However, it turned out to be completely his mistake, as he admitted later on. What happened with Sainz left Ferrari and F1 fans scratching their heads yet again. He started from the back of the grid due to a new engine, but was able to climb the ladder very fast. After starting on hard compound tires, he pitted under the safety car just like anyone else, but his pit stop took a while and he was released unsafely, getting in the way of Albon and receiving a 5-second penalty. So with the medium compound tires, Sainz was pushing hard and passed Russell for P4. It seemed like Perez would be too big of a challenge for him on the P3, as the Spaniard was discussing whether he should box or not because he was holding good on these tires. At first, he was called into the box, but then at the last corner, he was told to stay out just when he was about to pass Perez. Passing Perez was impressive enough, as Sainz had to survive the last 11 laps of the race on these tires. He had a 5-second penalty, so he had to push his advantage from Perez over 5 seconds in order to secure a podium. His team, however, didn't feel that way, as they pitted him for the tire change, as Binotto said that it was the right choice to do. We're pretty sure it was the right choice, because at the time it was shot on live with wear on tires, so it could have been really risky to go to the end. We don't think he would have had the pace still to open the gap to fight second, because he had a 5-second penalty at the time, and by stopping he did as well the fastest lap, which is certainly a point which was somehow granted. So I think that was the safest and the right decision to take, said Binotto. However, many felt like Ferrari had stripped away the podium from Sainz, as those tires would have definitely made it to the end according to them. One of the experts that openly criticized Ferrari's blunder was Nico Rosberg, saying, first of all, he was in the middle of a huge battle out on track and his whole team wasn't watching that anymore. They had their heads down, doing their calculations about pit stop times, and they were talking to him in the middle of the wheel-to-wheel action there. I'm like, guys, what on earth are you doing? And then Carlos is P3, and comfortably he would have been able to stay there. The tires would have been fine until the end, and he even had the chance to still get Lewis for P2. Then they bring him in with no chance to go beyond P5, where he ended up. What on earth is going on there?
I think it's time they made some changes there. Some serious changes. Terrible judgment there, and I can't explain it. Mattia really needs to get on top of that and make some serious changes there now," said Rosberg. With Leclerc's retirement and Sainz's P5 finish, Red Bull have absolutely extended their lead in both the Constructors and Drivers' Championships. Leclerc said it himself that if he makes these kinds of mistakes, then he doesn't deserve the championship. Along with the reliability issues of their engines, Ferrari really needs to get their heads down and work for the upcoming GPs. We're headed to Hungary on a back-to-back weekend. This track looks like a Ferrari-dominated one since it's called Monaco without the walls, due to the low-speed corners and bumpiness of the track. Would Ferrari finally be able to get their things together? Check out the next video here. Take care and drive safely.